Welcome to the Thursday Checkdown. I'm your host, Greg Kellogg. I'm sporting the virtual brick wall because earlier in the week I had done a music post on X, and my former co-host, the gentleman that Tipp graciously replaced, had said that I was asking for a favorite song and favorite lyric out of that song, and Mace put up another brick in the wall. I'm looking for obscure songs, and he puts up, another brick in the wall. Sorry.
Well, Greg, when it comes to your Michigan sports, I feel like it is talking to a brick in the wall. Whenever
Well, that's true. I mean, you would think that seeing, I'm with, TM, MBTM, the man so sure of his sexuality, he feels comfortable wearing a man bun. And I got to tell you, I didn't think any black male would ever do that. Ever do that. So, Yep, I'm glad that you're not worried about being called gay. I just
no. Well, no. You know what? I'm not. I have nothing against any of the communities, but no, I'm definitely.
Me either. But I like Alana.
Yeah.
Alana's needs.
No, hey, Alana did it. Alana's the one that did it. Yeah, she did. She does my hair.
She's keeping the other girls away from me. I know what that is. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, Tipp has been working ungodly hours. He is now officially a longshoreman in his day life. And last couple of shows, he's had to come on with no image because he was all stanky.
Was not camera ready.
Today we got him. He's ready. And we have an OG for a guest. We have a guy that may have won the first big money contest ever. We're going to talk to him about it. Friend of mine from years ago, John Laub. And John, how you doing tonight, baby?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Tipp and Greg. I'm so happy about it. I don't mind the man bun. I give you credit, man. It looks good to me. So let's go for it. But yeah,
you know
man,
what?
anytime.
And you know what, John? Look at this. I mean, John, you've got the full on. There's no gray, very little in the beard.
And he's
how do you go back so far, man? How do you keep it looking so tight? What's up with that?
He started when he was 3 years old.
I will say, I guess I think I got my mom's genes, just pure luck as far as the face and the hair. I am very lucky. I mean, most of my friends are either bald or grayed, so I'm okay with that. I mean, it'll turn soon. It's going to happen. But so far I've been all right.
John, I played in my first league in 1986. Tipp, were you even alive in 1986?
I was 4 years old.
Okay, so Tipp was clearly not playing back then. I know you started, 3 years later than I did?
I did, 1989, and I'll never forget. Remember, there used to be a fantasy book by, I think it was Cliff Charpentier. It was a thick book in like Barnes and Nobles or Walmart. It wasn't a magazine. It was a literal paperback thick book. It was probably like 200 pages, and I was in publishing at the time. So you figure he had to go to print because it was available by like June. And the publishing back in the 80s, you're talking a long time. He probably went to print like a week after the draft. So, I mean, but no one knew. It was 1989. You thought it was hot information. Now with the internet, this would be like light years behind the times. But I was with a friend, and I had we had a job working with kids at Norwalk Park and Rec. And him and I drove together to carpool. So we bought the book, and we would read it when the passenger would read it while the driver was driving. And we put together an 8-man fantasy league in 1989 from the book. We tweaked a little bit, but we used his core of ideas. Remember, Greg, there was no yardage, straight touchdowns.
Scoring only and field goals.
Scoring only. Wow.
Scoring only.
And kickers were gold. You could have a game where you had like one touchdown pass, no rushing touchdowns from your running backs, no touchdowns from your wide, and you had 4 field goals and 2 extra points, and you're like, holy shit. Like, it was, kickers mattered back then. There was no question about that. And I had the second pick. We picked it out with I was in college, grad school at the time, and we had a bucket, and I had pick number 2, and I took Dan Marino. And it was after, it was 89. His great season is in 84. He has another MVP season in 86 where he throws like 42 or 44 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then in 89, he was pretty good. He probably had like 28 touchdowns. I mean, he was probably in the top 3, but it's not like the magical 35 number or 40 number that we've seen. And the waiver wire pickup of the year was Thurman Thomas. I mean, he was just simply spectacular. Wow. And here's how it's so funny looking back. You know, we didn't know. We were 22, young kid. It looks like we were young kids thinking back. The top 4 picks, Randall Cunningham, Dan Marino, Jim Everett, and Boomer Esiason.
Wow.
It wasn't and Eric Dickerson was number 5. And that was very standard.
I'm out. Yeah. Other than Dan Marino, there's a lot of players today have no idea who Randall Cunningham is, who Everett. They don't know any of those names.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Randall Cunningham was simply spectacular. He was probably, 15 years ahead of his time. I think he'd even be better in today's NFL than he was back then. He would have better coaching. The offense coordinator would know how to use him better. He was with Buddy Ryan, and I wouldn't exactly call Buddy Ryan an offensive wizard. I think he literally just told Randall, go out there, son, and make some plays. Like, I don't think there was a lot of offensive coaching, right? Like, there wasn't a lot of offensive coaching on those teams. It was Keith Byers, and I forgot the receivers. They were pretty good. Nothing great. Keith Jackson, the tight end. But Randall was simply great. Jim Everett, I think, was Jim Everett top 3 pick? I think he was a top 3 pick in the NFL draft.
He was Rams, right?
Yeah. And he was always good. He never, when he was coming out of Purdue, he was probably projected to be a Dan Marino type, Dan Fouts type player. He was always very good, but he wasn't spectacular, if that makes, he had like 24 to 28 touchdowns every year. And Boomer Esiason was coming off the Super Bowl, the Bengals, that no-huddle offense in Cincinnati and all that. Now, it's interesting because I was just watching the Bills, reminiscing. It was, 4 years in a row or something? It's on Netflix about
they lost all 4,
they went to Super Bowl. Yeah, and they were talking about the Bills doing no-huddle first, and I'm like, man, it's the Bengals with Boomer and Sam Weish and Ickey Woods and Eddie Brown. I mean, the Bills made it better, and the Bills were better at it for a longer period of time. But it's from my memory, and I just finished watching it the other day, like literally 2 or 3 days ago. I'm like, it's Sam Weish and the Bengals. Because Boomer in 88, I believe he was NFL MVP, and he tore up the NFL with that no-huddle offense that year. Now, eventually they gave it to Kelly, and they just said, go with it. And that's what made the Bills' offense spectacular. But, man, it was so much fun back then. And we still have that league. We just finished our 35th year. Out of the original 8 guys, 5 of us are still in it. And it's a 12-man league now. And we've had the same 12 owners since like 2002. So we haven't even changed an owner in 20 years.
Money league or free league?
No, this is, you know what, Greg? We were all in college, and this is strictly for bragging, talking shit. Excuse my language. This is totally for talking. This is talking crap all the way through. I'm telling you, it's still probably the most competitive and the one you always want to win every, it's the one you really feel good when my college roommate is in it. For all 35 years, he's been in the league. My brother's in it. So this is the one I'd love to win, but they're also the most. These guys have all been playing for 35 or 25 years. We're good. Like, there's no lazy owner in the league.
And that's great because participation is important. Before I turn it over to Tip for his first question, Wendy Early, who is Bob Harris's bestie, she's got a shirt that says so.
Yeah.
Spoke highly of you, and I know she's going to want to get you on her show, The Game Changers. And then Mr. Football is actually Ronnie Evans, who's a big AI guy, and he says you're the first OG analyst that gave him the time of day, and he really appreciates you.
So now it's Tip's turn. I do remember Ronnie. That has to be now. I got probably 2018 or 17. I'm not exactly sure, but somewhere I met Ronnie around that time period.
Tip?
Well, we're going to start with Ronnie, Mr. Football. He had a question for you. Is Jalen Wright top 2 RB in this class? Yes or no?
Right now, it's a no, and I do like Jalen Wright a ton. I am on the bandwagon. We didn't see him at the Senior Bowl. And I do need some explosive scores at the combine. My stats and my model like him a lot. I need to see him healthy, and I need to see that 20-yard shuttle and the 3-cone drill. I'm not, unless he blows a gasket and runs a 6.4, which isn't going to happen, or 4. Well, sorry, we have some dogs eating dinner. If he runs a 4.64, they get jealous of each other when they're eating dinner. I would assume that Jalen Wright will be fine in the 40-yard dash. I need to see explosion scores and the health, but I love him. I just need to see a little bit. Not every data point has been checked at this point. Top 2 means you're special. He's not there yet.
What about my boy from Michigan?
Oh, God. Here we go.
Number 1, baby.
That's what I said.
It's funny. I just uploaded on Monday, and it's coming out this weekend, my running back rankings on Player Profiler, and Blake Corum is now at number 1 at top. He has no weakness. He does everything well. I'm not sure if he has a special trait other than toughness between the tackles, but he's going to be a very good NFL running back who can do a lot of things for you.
Could you see him reunite with
running back since Barry Sanders? If you look at his 2021 and 2022 tape, he blew his knee out before the Ohio State game. It takes 18 months to recover. He was back on the field 9 months later. And he played well last year. He just didn't have the elusiveness that he normally has. I think he's fully healed next year. I agree with you. Number 1, baby. Tip, sorry.
No, you're fine. No, I mean, could you see him reunite with Harbaugh in LA?
So that's
I don't think running back is their biggest need right now.
Well,
I don't think either. If I'm looking at I've been thinking about this because you have the big 3 quarterbacks. They're probably off the board in the top 3 picks. Then you probably have Marvin Harrison. So then what? Chargers are number 5. They need offensive line help. And we know Harbaugh and Greg Roman want to play in a phone booth, and they literally want to punch you in the face as often as hard as possible. They have that offensive lineman out of Notre Dame. I think his last name's Alt. He's like 6'7" or something like that, 320
offensive
pounds.
Tackle, right?
Yeah, I think he's that guy. Now, the question to me is Blake Corum, would they take him in the 2nd? That seems early at pick what? That would be about pick 37, pick 36. But is he there at the top of the 3rd round? If he's there, I could see Harbaugh take him. Now, I'll say this. I don't think, and people are going to bless me, I don't think there's any chance Austin Eckler is a Charger next year. He's not a Harbaugh running back. He's just not a Harbaugh running back. He needs a guy between the tackles. He had Frank Gore. He had, remember Hassan Haskins when he was really good at Michigan, Blake Corum. He wants a back who is nasty and tough between the tackles. And that's just not Austin Eckler. He's a pass catch back who needs space on the outside. So I think they move away from Eckler. Then it's who does he like? Hey, I think Corum would look very nice in Los Angeles in that baby blue out there. 3rd round, that's the sweet spot. for Blake Corum, I think.
All right, so I do have a question for you. Now let's get back to some of your roots. So you are a historian, I'm a
history teacher.
You are a historian. So you are a history teacher. That's what you have your degree in. How do you correlate history to fantasy football? How do you do? What are some correlations to that?
History repeats, baby.
What you're going to see, if you can see on the other side, I have my computer, and on the other side of my office, I have records, printouts of every year from the league I just discussed from 1989 to 2015. Now it's all on the computer, so it's easier to save. I have saved for about the first 20 years I played fantasy football. I literally saved everything. Don't know why. It's the historian in me. I just thought this was different. I knew that this game was incredible. I knew there was a bigger. I didn't think it would be as big as it is now. So that's a whole. It's just so big now. Celebrities are playing. That's like beyond my imagination in 1989. But I did think people would love the game, so I kept everything. I have rosters. If I look, I have a folder with Vinny Testaverde on the Ravens winning me a championship. Like, I have all that stuff, and I love the history of football. I'll pop in on YouTube. It used to be NFL, Network or NFL Films or something, but now YouTube, everything's there. You can find everything. I have literally. You're going to laugh at this. I've been watching old playoff games that I always dreamed of. About a decade ago, I used to tweet the NFL Network and NFL and be like, why are you not showing the 1973 AFC Championship game between Miami and Pittsburgh, or 72, whatever it was, right? There's all these games that are free. Why are you not showing them but they're all on YouTube now. I fall into these wormholes. I'm watching, I had the best weekend. I watched the 1977 Broncos versus Steelers divisional playoff, Orange Crush, Steel Curtain. I watched the whole thing, snap, and I ate it up like a kid in the candy store. And it is so wild. My son was sitting with me, right? And the receivers on Denver, they had their hands on the ground. The receivers were in the 3-point stance. And my son goes, Dad, did they think that was good? I said, Ronnie, it's just what we did. I remember in Pop Warner, that's how receivers lined up. No one could think that you get out of your stance better of a 3-point than up. And there was there was literally no motion on any offense. If you got lucky, it was a fullback that kind of went out and and the announcer would be like, we have a fullback in motion. Look at that. There is nothing, dude. It is unbelievable. And I've been watching Dallas, what the flex defense and Roger Staubach. And
Isn't Dallas the ones that would get into their 3-point stance and then stand up and then go back down?
And my dad and I used to drive us crazy. I remember my dad, because if you were alive in the 70s and early 80s, the 4 o'clock games on the East Coast, so I'm in Connecticut, were almost always either the Raiders or the Cowboys. They just would come on at 4 o'clock. Jets and Giants usually played at 1. Sometimes you had a Giant game, Dallas at 4. But then you'd be playing Dallas anyways. And I remember my dad's the arrogance of those Cowboys because he was the Giants fan. He's like, I hate that damn offensive line. Every time they snap, they have to go up and down. But, man, I watch it all, and there's just so many interesting things. I love to see the evolution of the game. Sometimes I watch players, and I say to myself, would they be better or worse in today's game? There are definitely players who you look, you're like, I don't think they play well in today's game. But then there's some receivers who you just look at and you're like, this guy was wasted in 1978. There's no cross patterns. There's no bunching receivers. You literally have 80% of the time, one receiver on one side, one receiver on the other, and you're running it deep and you're running it out. Literally that's it. And then I'll say the quarterbacks. Oh, my God. They almost have no coaching from technique. Their technique is so bad. So bad, dude. And I bet you if I did more research, I bet you when they were in college and the pros, they probably never had a quarterback coach. They never went to quarterback training school like we do now. Like I watch Matthew Stafford, and when he's healthy, the technique that man throws with is simply beautiful. Like it's ridiculous. We literally have, you watch the 70s, first of all, 7 to 8 step drops, which people just aren't. There's no such thing as a 3-step get the ball out. Like they're literally fading back, right? And they are literally throwing the ball off. Like there is no technique. It is all arm strength. Like just, and sometimes you're like, that guy still got the ball 40 yards down the field, like throwing off his back foot. And I'll say this, the only other thing.
Kyle Bowler.
The violence of the game is so different, dude.
Yeah.
The hit, when you see wide receivers and running backs, I'm like, if you're going out of bounds, it was legal to pop someone 4 or 5 yards out of white. Like they would just get destroyed.
The old players were tougher, but the new players are more skilled, in my opinion.
Oh, there's no question they're more skilled today's play. They get better coaching. I think they get better eating habits. They have better physical. Yeah, they have better conditioning. The coach, I mean, come on, there's 2 tight ends coaches nowadays. Like they're just so much better. But I'll say one thing. What I think, maybe it's the Steelers and the Broncos could run the ball back then. The offensive lines were better in the 70s than they are now. I
just think the players were more physical back then.
Well, I think the coaching was more demanding because it was the run game, and the way they trap blocked and combine blocked and like double teamed and then got off the double team and go to the linebacker. Like I really like watching the offensive line. And I didn't. Oh my God! So you probably heard about Mean Joe Green, right? Everyone's heard about Mean Joe Green. So I like to watch Mean Joe Green because I'm just like, there is this one. There's 2 minutes left. Denver's got the ball on their side of the field, right? I can't believe it. Mean Joe's like, he's a defensive tackle. The offensive guard has him. The offensive guard, probably a little holding. In the day, you could get away with a little holding. I swear to God, Mean Joe just raised his fist, sucker punched the guy in the gut. He falls straight to the ground. It looks like he got him right under the solar plex, right? Falls to the ground. And he didn't get a flag. He didn't get thrown out. Like, Chuck Noll's just like, hey, Joe, come here for a second. And like, literally, like, you're thinking, like, I'm so used to today's game, right? To the bench, or you're out, right? Chuck Noll must have just said, hey, Mean Joe, keep it down. Go back. Literally on the next play, he's back in there, and the Broncos are chipping him, with the guard and the tackle, because they're pissed at him because they had to bring in their backup guard. I was like, oh, my God. So there are, like, you see these there's much more after the play or the tackle is made. There's much more punching and hitting. And I'll say one thing I've noticed a lot. They didn't lead with their helmets. I think the players, there was a code, and they understood the helmets weren't intuitively super built. The tackles are all with the shoulder and the body. Obviously the head. You don't get these head-to-head collisions, which made me think a lot. In the 90s, remember, Greg probably remembers this, the big thing in the NFL is we got new helmets. They're safe. Watch tape of safeties in the 90s. They're literally headhunting. Like, literally, watch Andre Waters of the Eagles. Watch Steve Atwater of the Broncos. They are literally taking their head like a
John,
missile.
look at their uniforms, because they had these huge neck braces in the back that would go up on the back of their helmet because they were leading with the helmet. And that's the only thing that would prevent them from getting a broken neck, because they were leading with their helmets.
So I actually think the game is, like, if I was a coach, I'm not. I think you need to go back and teach basic tackling techniques
Yeah.
because they intuitively understood in the 70s, I can't lead with my head. Like I'm going to get hurt. So how do you hurt someone? You hurt them with the shoulder. And look, I'm not telling you they're angels, because you see a lot of this after the play on the ground, or you see a safety, like you'll literally see the running back on the ground, and a safety will just come flying in with the shoulder long after the play. So, but I love this stuff from an historian standpoint. And then, like, the coaches, it's wild. They don't have headsets. They don't have pads of paper. They're literally, like, Chuck Nolan's literally just walking up and down the sideline like this. I mean, it's so, like, and
that's because the quarterbacks called their own plays.
They did, but he's still talking to people. He's doing things, but it almost seemed like, in one way, my first thought was he had distanced himself from the game. But then I realized he's probably taking more in of the actual game. Like, he's absorbed with what's actually in front of him and thinking about cognitively this. Where now, Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, right? Just they got their notebook, they got the headset, they're thinking about the next play. They're doing it. I think
they got assistant coaches that are charting every play,
everything,
and showing what the defense is doing with images. They have images of each play, and they can say, okay, when we went into this motion, what did the safety do? Did the linebacker shift? And real time, they're using one play to set up another play 3 plays down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they do. They have plays leading the plays. I got to bring you back, though, John. I got to bring you back. You won one of the very first high-stakes leagues in fantasy football. Tell us about that.
So, in 1992, there used for those of us who are old enough, we used to read the USA Today. That was the sports Bible paper, especially if you liked the team that was outside the local area. Like my best friend who's a Jet fan, he read the Daily News and the New York Post because that's what he wanted to read. But if you want national teams, you want the Rams, you want something on Dallas, you want something on the Bears, you need to read the USA Today or Pro Football Weekly. Those are basically the two sources for national publications. So in the USA Today, there was an advertisement. It was a company called Sports Challenge. And basically, it was a salary cap league. Players' values went up and down like the stock market, kind of like DFS, similar but different. And it was like $75, and you got a team for the entire season. So it was an 18-week season in 1993. Remember, there was like 2 or 3 years where they played 18 weeks. Every team had 2 weeks off, so the season was longer. And back then, they would publish the salaries of the players in the USA Today like every Wednesday. So you would have to get the paper. I mean, it was probably good for the paper, good for the company, right? Because it made me buy the paper, made me read the paper. And then you have to call in by Saturday night at 8 o'clock on the phone. You'd have to call an operator and say, okay, I'm going to bench Boomer Esiason. I'm going to start I'm trying to think. Jeff Hostetler. I'm going to pick up Rodney Hampton and bench, Ickey Woods, even though I know he's not there by then. And I did that for 18 freaking weeks. 15,000 people played, and I beat them all. And every Monday morning, or Tuesday morning, because you have Monday Night Football, because you had all the games. There was no one afternoon. It was all every game all week. And I would I would be in my office at work, and you remember, Greg, the old fax machines. Yep. I would call an 800 fax number. My credit card was on file, and for $2, I look back, I'm like, it was $2. For $2, they would fax you your results of the week, or you could wait for the mail, and you would get a hard copy of the mail on like Thursday or Friday, but I didn't want to wait. I'm like, and all year long, I was in the top 25.
Wow.
By week 3, I was like 24. Then I was 20. Then 15. And I'll never forget when they had defense. You had to have one team defense. And I'll never forget the worst team in the league that year was the Seattle Seahawks. Were awful on offense. God awful. And my best friend and I were playing. I said, John, I like the Cowboys defense against the freaking Seahawks. He's like, oh, dude, I love them. I'll never forget. They scored 51 fantasy points. They shut out the Seahawks like 52-0. Like it was early in Jimmy Johnson. He hadn't won a Super Bowl, I think, yet. They were just like Norton was there, Russell, Maryland. They were just getting their whole defense together. So I won that. And I remember, like, did I actually win this? Like I couldn't believe I beat 15,000 people. And this is how crazy the week I thought I won. I did good the last week of the year, but I wasn't sure. We had a blizzard in Connecticut in the Northeast. The company was in Massachusetts. They had a blizzard. They couldn't get to the computers. There was no internet. They couldn't get to the computers. So they had on their 800 number, sorry, offices are closed. Call back Wednesday. It might have been the longest 48 hours of my entire darn life. Was waiting for that Wednesday fax. $10,000.
Wow.
No, 10,000.
10,000.
And then I got a check in the mail. Check. I remember waiting, and I called the guy, like about a week later. Oh, yeah, we were going to call you. I'm like, oh, my God. Check's going to be cut on February 3rd. It'll reach, and I still have a picture. I photographed it. I took a Xerox copy. I got the check, and I'll never forget putting it in the bank. It was one of the coolest, greatest things I've ever done.
To me, I think the most exciting thing, I wrote for years. I hosted my own website and had people write for me for years. But the coolest thing was when Emil, I didn't just go to one site, okay? Emil published me in his magazines. Dan and Kelly Grogan published me in their magazine. I think I even had one article that went into Ian Allen's magazine. I mean, all this stuff. I was able to take those. The second year that I got published by Emil, I told him not to send me money. I mean, it was usually $50 for an article. It wasn't a lot, but I said, don't send me any money. Send me 5 copies of the magazines, and I mailed them to my mom and dad and my family because this is me in a freaking magazine, and I was so excited about that. Do you have any experience? I mean, winning 10,000 is pretty big. What was your most exciting experience that you shared with your family?
Well, I took everyone out. There was adult beverage, a bar they call it, with restaurant food. And it was literally, I took my family and friends, and it might have been one of the greatest nights of my life. I said, everything's on me. Everything's on me. I had for like 6 years, we had $900 in booze and food. And I knew the owner because I used to go, I didn't have DirecTV. I used to go to the bar and watch games on DirecTV because he had 5 TVs, so you could watch 5. That was what you did in the 90s. You wanted to watch, all 5 games at once. You had to go to a bar. I didn't have DirecTV. Some people might have. So I would go there, and for like 5 or 6 years, every time, I remember his name, great guy, TK. He'd always be like, John, you still have the highest bar tab ever. I'm like, really? He's like, no, beating that $900. And, he was like a local little college bar, right? So, with like wings and nachos and like, grilled, dirty, greasy grilled hamburgers, right? It wasn't like a fancy restaurant. But that was the absolute coolest thing, was I was just like, put it on the Amex. I'm buying it. I got the money in the bank. We're going to just anything anyone wants, just go ahead. And I think it ended up like me and my 4 best friends were there till closing. Obviously, the family and people left earlier, but we stayed there all night. It was great. That was one of the, it was one of the only times. I mean, now that I'm older, it's different. probably the only time in my 20s where I just said, I don't care what anything costs.
Yep.
Man, that's pretty awesome. That's an awesome story. Well, as far as influences, John, talk to us about some influences on your career when it comes to fantasy football. Who influenced you?
Well, I mean, there's the big three, and I've been a football diehards, since 1997. But it's Emil Cadillac was the first one who I used to talk to, and him and I used in the 90s. We had phone conversations sometimes for up to 3 hours. Emil was a great person to talk to. He always wanted to learn. He wanted to listen. He would listen to my opinion. And this is one of my favorite stories. Now everyone does, the World Championship of Football was started by Emil. I think, I don't know. One of the bigger companies, there's a couple companies that do those big, $10,000 league entry fees. He started, I'll never forget, one summer, we were talking on the phone. It was probably early August. He goes, John, I have this idea. What do you think of World Championship of Football? I said, what do you mean? He goes, take the best guys. We all get together in Las Vegas, and everyone drafts a league. Everyone drafts a team. We have all kinds of leagues, and then you get down to it, and like, Emil, that's a no-brainer. Like, that sounds like the best idea. Like, people are going to love that. He's like, I think I'm going to put the ad in the magazine. I remember, like you said, Greg, I remember opening up his magazine, and like on the back inside cover was like the World Championship of Fantasy Football. I'm like, Emil did it. Like, he's actually having this thing. Like he would always ask me about ideas and things because he knew I loved the game and the hobby. And then I would bounce ideas off of him, and we were always talking. And he allowed me to write for his magazines, just like Greg. He allowed me to work on the website. Then the next two would really be Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey. And I remember, how long was it ago? 12 years ago now. Might have been, I forget exactly. But I was listening to Sirius XM. And I was driving around one Saturday night, like, football diehards. Is that Emil and Bob? Like, I couldn't believe there was a fantasy channel. Like, literally, I was like, I can't believe this. This is gold. So I'm listening. I'm like, that's Bob and who's Mike? Because I thought it would be Emil, but it was Mike and Bob. So I said, you know what? I'm going to email Bob. I said, Bob, I've been doing player rankings for you and Emil for like 12 years now. I would love to come on Saturday nights because I knew he had guests. So for the first 2 or 3 years, I was with Mike and Bob every Saturday night, like around 9 o'clock to 9:30. And we would do sleepers because I did player rankings. I would identify, here's my 2 sleepers, here's my long shot at each position. So the first segment would be long shots and sleepers. And the second segment, we would take people's calls, right? Who's in my lineup and everything. So I really think those are the big three who allowed me to express myself, gave me a platform to think, write, analyze, research. So those are the big three who, in the sense that there's a lot of other people, but it would be, and I was on Football Diehards with Mike all these years. And then the next, Emil, I said, Emil, can I do player profile? I want to do rookie profiles for the website. It's like, good, let's do it. Sounds great. I did it for 10 years with him. I was always on with Mike and Bob throughout the fall or throughout the draft process, a couple times in the spring. I've got married, have 3 kids, so I couldn't do that every Saturday night. Life changes and moves on. But those are the big three. I'll never forget Emil, Bob, and Mike. I mean, they really allowed me to get where I am today.
Yeah, I used to call Bob from Atlanta when I was living in Atlanta. Bob and I would talk until 3 in the morning. He and I did the first. We did the first podcast together. He would go out.
Really?
He would go out and record somebody interviewing a player or coach, and then he would send me a scripted question. I would record the question. He'd cut it in, and it was like the player or coach was answering my question when it was really from another interview. I mean, that was the first podcast. That really was how we did it. But yeah, I tell people, get to the expo because you can meet these guys and they're personable. They really are, John. there are no bad people in fantasy football because the ones who are bad don't last. You've been in it for 10, 15 years. If you're bad, that reputation is going to precede you, and you'll be gone. But if you're a good
You know what,
person,
Greg? You
you're
know
going to
what's
last.
interesting? That being around for all these years, and Twitter changed a lot too, like just the amount of people you had access to. Because there were people like, I guess I wasn't big into the what do they call those chat rooms? The football
Yeah,
diehards had their
the old forums, like football guy forums, and
yes,
we started in the Usenet.
yeah,
Before there was really World Wide Web, there was Usenet,
yeah,
rec.sport,
right,
.football, .fantasy, RSFF. That's where
yeah.
Fanix came from, was Usenet.
Yeah. So I was never that big into those just because it was time and you had to sit down and I was doing other things. But Bob would talk about it and he'd say, oh, yeah, the fans in there love you on the football diehards for your sleepers. I'm like, oh, that's cool, you know? And they kept working with me, so it must have been something was. But then I got onto X and I just met so many people. But now that I've been here for so long, I'm amazed at how many people have come and gone already, Greg. And I think it's exactly what you say. If you don't have a certain standard, how you treat people, how you do your research, you got to be on time. Like when I say I'm going to have an article on this thing, I've probably been late in 30 years. Like I never miss deadlines. And if someone wants a specific date, I always hit it. So I think like those things, and I'm dead serious in 97 now. So what is that? 27 years. 27 years. I never missed a week of the football season with Bob and Mike on the football diehards. That includes player rankings and DFS information. Never missed a week. That's marriage, career change, children. I didn't care what. If I had to be up at 2 a.m. alone, I was doing my player rankings like with a flashlight in the kitchen doing it. You know, like if I want this, you have to do it. And I'm a teacher, so I tell the students the same thing. Like, it's the biggest thing I'll say that teaching that is I see it now with young adults and what I do professionally. When you say you're going to do something or someone gives you a deadline, you got to do it. I mean, because that person around you, maybe once, you can say once, you know, obviously something happens. I get it. You know, you have an accident. Okay, that's legitimate. Make sure you don't miss again. Or if you've been working with someone for a long time, they'll let you have a day. You're like, I can't do it today. They're like, fine, you're always good. Something happened. But you can't start off. And one thing that I've noticed, because people reach out to me, and a lot of young people ask me to mentor, and I do some editing. Young kids are late. I'm like, look it, man, I can't sit there and edit if you don't give it to me. Like, I'm not up at 3 a.m. anymore. I'm an old man. Like, yeah, maybe in 1994, I would have been up and I could have wrote it. But if you say you're going to get it to me at 7 and I told you I'll edit it, it better be because I have a wife, I have children, I have dogs. You're the dog, right? I can't be waiting to help someone. If I'm willing to help, which is cool, I love it. But if I'm willing to help and mentor, you better do it on time. And then when I have deadlines, you know, if I'm working with someone collaborating, you better get it to me so that I can hit our deadline, right? Like, and I try to tell my students that and my children, you know, when you got to be on work, you got to be 5 minutes early. Maybe I'm old, maybe it's just the way I am. You know, like 5 minutes early is on time. 5 minutes late is you're late, right? Like those things matter, especially in our hobby where it's freelancing, you're uploading. You know, I look just tonight. I said to Greg, I'll be there shortly. I got on what 6:56, right? And I'll say the same thing in podcast. It means a lot to me now when someone says that they're going to come on. You know, they invite me on at 8:00, and I'm cool with that. Even though I get up at 5:30, I don't mind. But don't tell me you're not there until 8:45, 9:00. Like that's not acceptable in a professional world where you're trying to make it. Now, of course, if something tragic happened, I totally understand. But just some like, oh, I was busy, I was late, you know, no, you can't do that. Now, I'll still wait, but the chance of getting me on a second or third time, then we're taught right. It better be right. So those little things really, especially in our world, where it's not like in the office. I'm not sitting next to someone in the office at a cube, or I'm not at school like I'm meeting people over computers. So we're sending files to each other. Got to get things done on time.
15 minutes early is 5 minutes late. I'm going to turn it back.
There you go, Greg. Right?
I'm going to turn back to Tip, but there's another point I want to make, because I was asked to look at an article this week, and I like the young writer, Jack Lucerni. I think that's how he pronounces his name. And he used the word unencumbersome when he meant cumbersome. And little things like that can kill your credibility. I used to tell my writers when I hosted a site, spell check everything. And when you're done, have somebody read your article to you out loud, because a lot of times when you put it down on paper, you think it makes sense, but when you actually hear it, you can see the grammatical mistakes. So always spell check everything and read it out loud so that you can catch those grammatical mistakes, because you can have the best article in the world, technically the best article in the world. You spell a player's name wrong, your credibility's gone. I mean, just if you don't pay enough attention to how to spell, people are going to question how much research you did and how much analysis you did. So little things mean an awful lot in our world. Your turn, Tip. Sorry about that.
Oh, no. I love hearing that. And my mom, a former English teacher, God rest her soul, probably loves hearing that as well.
Yeah.
But I will say, I'm going to ask you, John, you've given some great history lessons as far as some of the games that you watched on YouTube. I want to hear what was your thoughts on the Super Bowl? Where were you ranking this past Super Bowl 58?
It's just outside my top 10. I've seen every Super Bowl since Super Bowl 12. And Greg and I lived through the disaster area of the Super Bowl. Like, there were literally probably 10 years where it was over by halftime. Like, the game was just really, really bad. It wasn't good until the fourth quarter. I had a party. My two best friends and their wives and their kids came over. My family, my son and his girlfriend and my daughter and her boyfriend were here. So we had a nice little crowd. We had our pizza and our wings and all of our food and everything. And the game, we were at halftime. We were watching Usher. I'm like, I think the halftime show is better than the freaking Super Bowl right now, because there really wasn't anything of interest in the Super Bowl. Yeah. But by the fourth quarter, I was like, this game is actually close. And if you get close, it's a good game. So I was at least happy by the fourth quarter. I don't want to blow out again. I mean, I saw Denver, 51-10 against the 49ers. I've seen some really, really bad ones. So I do like that. It's not a classic. Even though it went to overtime, I can't put it wasn't great from start to finish. Like, there wasn't a lot of I felt like the Chiefs are going to win. I know it might sound crazy even when they were down by 10, but I felt the Chiefs were in control. And I thought San Fran missed too many opportunities. They should have been ahead in the game. There were some turnovers early. So, is this a blooper bowl like Super Bowl 5? What's going to happen here? But they got the turnovers under control, probably nerves, young players, all of that. What Mahomes did in overtime was just so predictable, I thought. You just knew you can't give Patrick Mahomes, and his goal is to score the touchdown, because he's got to go for it on fourth down. And that changes the dynamics of every bit of strategy. It's not 3 downs and punt. It is now 4 downs and 10. And you are arguably talking about, quarterback in the top 5 all time right now. You can't do that. It's just like watching Joe Montana, Roger Staubach, Tom Brady. There's just times when you watch enough football and you just say to yourself, you cannot give that quarterback the football. You
John.
can't do it.
John Georgopoulos and William Del Pilar and I went over the Super Bowl on that show we did. Points on the board on Grumblings Media on YouTube. But bottom line is, I said the difference in this game was the defensive coordinator. I said,
"Oh, it's Spagnuolo."
Third and goal from the 5 in overtime. Spags sent the house.
And
Shut it down. Purdy didn't have any chance to throw the ball because they were coming, so they settled for a field goal. 4th and 1. Game over if they get a stop. They played vanilla. They didn't even blitz anybody. I would have sent the house and gone press coverage and said, get to Purdy. Get to Mahomes. I didn't expect Mahomes to run. I expected it to be a quick pass, but I would have gone body on body and send the house.
I mean, he was in shotgun.
Well, you can lose. You can lose doing that.
Yeah.
You can lose doing that. But 8-yard run by the quarterback that was a designed run, was not a scramble. I'm sorry. I just think the defensive coordinator was the difference in this game.
Yeah.
Well, I was on Friday night before the Super Bowl with Bob on Sirius XM, and he asked me for my prediction, and I said, I'm betting, and I did. I'm not a big bettor. I put $25 down, nothing to sacrifice the family, but I like a little action. You know what I mean? And I said, I'm betting Spagnuolo. Look, he is now defeated the undefeated Patriots. He's got 4 Super Bowl rings. And I'll tell you about history. Spagnuolo should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. It should
as
not
a defensive coordinator, not as a head coach.
Yes.
Not as a head coach.
No, because here's the deal. There have been Hall of Fame assistant coaches who are not CEOs, right? They're not the head guy. But damn, are they good at coaching everything else on their side of the ball, right? I mean, Spagnuolo literally does everything on the defense side of the ball. And you know what? If you're Andy Reid, what a brilliant hire that is. He doesn't have to do – what does he say, Spags? Do what you always do. Right. Spags is like, Coach, what do you want? You just do what you always do. Like, there's no pause, no discussion, total faith in the man. Do you have any idea how valuable that is as the head guy? Like,
hey, Buddy Ryan was a great DC, not a great head coach.
No, Buddy Ryan should be in the Hall of Fame. It
gives Andy Reid all the control on the offense that he wants to do, and he just doesn't even have to worry about the defense. He can just sit back, knows that the defense is doing what the defense is going to do, and that's it. He can focus more with Mahomes.
Yeah. When Kyle Shanahan called timeout, this was William Del Pilar's point. When Shanahan called timeout to stop a zero cover blitz from happening, he figured Simpkins was done. And sure enough, less than a week after the Super Bowl, Simpkins is done. He's gone.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I bet on Spags, and I the Chiefs' offense wasn't great. This was not this offense. I mean, the team in 2021 or 20 when they lost the Super Bowl, even though the Buccaneers just destroyed them, that was a good offense. The Buccaneers shut down. They just physically beat them up, which is ironic because Spagnuolo always wins with his front 4. And if you really, he does blitz, but if you watch him day and remember the Giants, I'll say this to this day. That front 4 with Jason Pierre-Paul, Michael Strahan, and Tuck. Well,
and Umanura, OC Umanura.
Oh my God. That is the most underrated. Yeah, that front 4 100%. Was phenomenal.
100%.
And no one talks about how good. I mean, it's Eli. No, that front 4 was so good with Spagnuolo. And they literally beat the crap out of New England's offensive line, which is hard to do with the Bill Belichick offense because his offense is tough and physical. And the Giants literally.
Bill Belichick is the most overrated head coach. He drafted Tom Brady in the 6th round. He didn't know what he had with Brady. If Bledsoe doesn't
No,
go down, look at his record without Brady. It's under 500. I don't think Belichick's all that good. DC, not a great head coach. Tip, you get the last question, and then we got to let John promote what he's doing.
Well,
Tip?
you know what? So I wanted to ask a follow-up to the Super Bowl question, but you know what? You started talking sleepers, and I love my sleepers for the upcoming year. That's one of the things I love to do. So give us a 2024 give us a 2024 sleeper for next year.
Well, because I'm knee deep in the rookie class, let's just say that because I haven't looked at the offensive coordinators yet to see like what they're going to do. So I need time on, but I've been knee deep in the rookie class. My favorite receiver in the rookie class that I'm getting in the third round of early dynasty, it's Javon Baker of UCF. If you haven't watched him play, he's 6'1", 205.
Okay.
He went to Alabama. This is who he was behind: Devonta Smith, John Mechie, and Jaden Watt. He couldn't get on the field. He went to UCF. He plays with anger like Zay Flowers. He's awesome.
Bigger though.
My model loves him with
Text
the
me that name. Text me that name. I've got a dynasty draft coming up.
Oh, Javon Baker, UCF. Absolutely love him. Greg talked about Blake Corum, obviously landing spot, but my running back, who isn't as well known, he's starting to get some press, but it's Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. That kid, oh my God, he could be great in the right system. I really like Jalen Wright. So draft capital, landing spot's going to matter. But I love Zay Flowers. If you were talking last year at this time, I would have said Zay Flowers. I think Javon Baker has they're different players, but attitude. They want the ball. They want to be. I said this. Javon Baker's the guy. You love him when he's your teammate. You absolutely hate him as a defensive back. Because
how is his blocking? How is his blocking?
He's good enough in Gus Malzane's offense. He'll be good enough in the NFL. He's not great, but he's not bad.
That's not what I mean. Is he? If you watch the Michigan receivers, they go downfield and block. Because running's such a big part of their offense. They have to block.
He's not a Michigan. He's not a Michigan receiver. No, he's not going to do. He's not that. He's not a Steeler receiver yet either. No, not yet. But I think he could be in the right. But I don't see that on film.
Okay. Okay, so promote. What are you doing? Where can they find your work? Do you have anything coming out in the next week or two that people need to pay attention to?
Oh, thank you. I got lots of stuff because this is my busiest time of the year. So right now on YouTube, if you go to the Rookie Big Board, we published our first 4 rookie profile series with my partner Matt Hicks and I. So right now we have Drake May, we have Troy Franklin, Rome Odunze, and Braylon Allen up there. On Sunday, we record our next 5, Greg, and guess who's in it? Blake Corum. We're doing.
What about Blake JJ?
He's week 3. Week 2 is Jaden Daniels, and we have with Daniels and Corum, we have Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors because everyone's talking about them. So check us out on YouTube, Rookie Big Board. We're going to do 30.
Your opinion?
Yeah,
I watched all the Michigan games.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr., according to pundits, is like Caleb Williams. They're generational talents. I don't buy it for Caleb Williams, and I don't buy it for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is an outstanding wide receiver, and he will be a good pro, but I don't see him as a generational talent. Do you?
I don't use the term generational anymore. Maybe it's just the old man in me. I do think it's overused. I'll say this, Greg. He's not my number 1 receiver.
Odunze, right?
Nope. Malik Neighbors. He's special. Malik Neighbors.
Okay.
He's the best receiver in this class. He's unbelievable. And people are afraid to say it.
I am tree.
What?
Does he have the full route tree?
Full route tree, dude. You can
Okay.
play him at the slot. You can play him at the X, the Y. You can put him in the backfield.
Wow.
You can run jet sweeps. He's deep. He's crossers. He's better.
What do you see him compared to Puka Nacua from last year?
They're very different. Puka Nacua is more physical. I would say Harrison and Nacua are closer. Neighbors he's really like Devonta Smith and Justin
Big
Jefferson
guy.
rolled up into one. I'm telling you, he's special. He's my guy. Like, he's so good, dudes. I mean, I have him at number one. This is the fourth. I've only been on 4 shows, and every show they've asked me about this, and I said, I'm not trying. I don't care about hot takes. I'm not that guy.
Who's your
He's
number?
just better. My film study and my model likes him better.
Okay, so here's my top 4 quarterbacks. Okay?
Okay.
May, McCarthy, Daniels, Williams. And I have Williams, Nix, and Penix very close.
So I'm a little different. I do have Caleb at the top. Then I have Drake May. Then I have Jaden Daniels. And then I have McCarthy. A little bit is fantasy oriented. I love Jaden Daniels.
I do
He
too.
does have the uber fantasy. I mean, the 1,000 yards rushing is just, you can't beat that, right? If he gets 800 yards. But here's what I'm concerned about Daniels. He's got to learn to slide. If you watch Daniels, he gets popped a lot. And there was at least 3 times where he went out of the game where, oh my God, he might have a concussion or a broken rib. Like, if he doesn't learn to slide at the NFL level and protect his body, he's going, and I say the same thing about Anthony Richardson. Even though Anthony Richardson's big, you got to protect your body. You can't just take stupid hits at the NFL level. Sure, Super Bowl on the line, John Elway, helicopter. You take it.
Have you done your film study on Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I love him. I do.
You don't worry about him under pressure, because when he's under pressure, he falls apart.
So I'm trying to analyze Caleb Williams. My old school wants to think about pressure like Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers. That's not how I measure pressure anymore. He does know how to slip and slide and bail. It's not the old school step up into the pocket. Now, he can do that. But the game is so different. The game is so different. He's so unique escaping pressure. You see, USC, I don't think they'll have an offensive lineman taken in the first 3 rounds. I could be wrong. I need to probably look a little deeper at that. I'm not overly impressed with USC's offensive line. So I do think there's some, that they had a jailbreak a lot of times. Like, you literally saw it was a jailbreak. He didn't have a McCarthy offensive line like in Michigan. But he can escape pressure with his legs so well, and he can make up for it with arm talent. So I'm okay with that. I agree, Greg. But maybe with some advanced coaching, with a different system, with some hot reads, getting the ball out of his hands, I think you could overcome that. I can't coach arm talent and athletic ability, but I can coach scheme. I can coach him to read the pocket, step up in the pocket. I can coach him how to bail properly at the NFL level. I can't coach the things that he has. I just can't do it. So I'm trying. The biggest thing that I've done the last 5 years, I stopped analyzing pocket presence under everything that I learned my entire life, which was Dan Marino, Dan Fouts, Eli Manning, Drew. They don't exist.
That's why I got May ahead of him. I got May number 1 because I think in the pocket, May is the best pocket passer there is this draft.
He is. But is that the way we should do it anymore? Because the game's so different.
Yeah, I think it is, because otherwise, the thing about the NFL is that those DBs are so fast and those linebackers are so fast. And if you're a running quarterback, okay, I differentiate quarterbacks in 3 categories. You have your pocket passers. They don't run unless they're forced to, and they're not very good at it. You have your pocket passers who can run. That's your Buffalo's quarterback.
Josh Allen, but
Josh Allen. That's Allen. He can run, but he he usually runs to extend the play rather than to run. Then you have your rushers. That's your Justin Fields and your Baltimore's quarterback.
Lamar.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson actually last year for the first time showed me the ability to run to extend plays and continue passing. So I think Lamar Jackson is improving as a quarterback.
Oh, I think he's definitely a better thrower than he came out of Louisville. No question.
Right, but I think that if you run to run, you're just begging to get hurt.
No, and that does worry me about Jaden Daniels because he's very slim. Jaden Daniels isn't big in the upper body. He's tall, he's lengthy, he's very good. But man, I'm telling you, if he doesn't slide, and let's just imagine if he was playing in the AFC Central. If he goes back to back against Pittsburgh and Baltimore and he's not learning how to slide, he might not make it out of those 2 weeks. But
how many games did AR play?
Yeah, I mean, so I like Drake May. I love him. I said last night, if you can go watch the preview.
He's got a quick release too. May's got a very quick release.
Oh, I like Drake May a lot. I think he's very good. Very good.
JJ has the highest completion percentage while scrambling of all the top quarterbacks.
He throws the ball on the run as well as anyone I've ever seen.
Yep.
He is 20, and I do think he needs Jordan Love coaching. I think he's better off if he sits for a year or two. I don't want to see JJ on a bad team thrown into the fire. He needs to sit. Jordan Love.
You know, I think, John, he would surprise you. That kid, 27-1 at Michigan. Yes, he had a great running game. Yes, he had great line play, but he still got quite a bit of pressure, and he still had to scramble quite a bit. Yeah. JJ can run. He's very athletic.
No, it's not, I'm not where I think experience, and you put him on a bad team. I've seen this too much in my lifetime.
Confidence is important.
Young men who have won a lot of football games, when they go to losing programs, it's very hard. And I learned this from listening to Christian Leitner. They asked him, why did your career not turn out the way it was? Because I think Christian Leitner is one of the greatest college basketball players who ever stepped on the court. And they said, why do you think your NBA career didn't turn out? He's like, my biggest thing was I didn't know how to deal with losing. I had never lost. When I got to the NBA, I was losing. I was losing a lot. And he said it psychologically beat me down. Yeah. So we never know. You never know how a player's going to react. JJ's been in such a perfect situation. Could he survive a 2-15 season where he's physically getting beat up? That's a big jump. I'm not saying he can't, but that's a big jump. Jordan Love, I'm sorry. You cannot tell me sitting on that bench for 2 years did not benefit Jordan Love.
Oh, I mean, 3 years, didn't he? Didn't he sit for 3 years?
Wow, I can't even remember now. It's at least 2. I'd have to look that up. But, man, hey, we're old enough to remember Carson Palmer, the Heisman winner, didn't play his rookie year at Cincinnati. Nope. So someone just
Nobody
said 3
used
years.
to. So, all those quarterbacks used to sit for 2 or 3 years before they came in.
So I'd be totally cool with personally, I would love JJ to go to Pittsburgh, sit behind that trio of terrible players for a year at quarterback, throw Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett to the Lions, then let JJ walk in a year from now and let him play with Pittsburgh with Tomlin.
I think you got to give him enough play time his rookie year to get used to the speed of the game. To get used to the speed of the game.
I don't want him to play 17 games playing the game. I
understand that. Anyway, you said YouTube. Anything else you want to promote? We took you over.
One other. All my written profiles are now moved over. For 10 years, they were up on Football Diehards, but now they're free at playerprofiler.com. Right now, top quarterbacks are up. You can read those. Running back should come out on Friday. maybe Saturday morning, and wide receiver should be the following weekend. But it's got my model, it's got my scouting reports, and it's got my rankings in it. So you can check that all out on Player Profiler.
Playerprofiler.com.
Yes, .com.
And John, say it again. Who's your number one running back?
Oh, Blake Corum.
Thank you. JC, take us out.